This video is going to be my second Super Bowl preview. Once again, we're going to focus on the matchup of the Seahawks offense versus New England's defense. This played exceptional football in moving through the AFC playoffs, only allowing 26 points in their 3 games. I'm going to give you some explanation of why I think the Seahawks might try to attack this defense on the outside with the outside zone concept, maybe reverse with Rashid Shaheed and others. This is going to be mostly Patriots film, to be honest with you. Show you 2 plays from Seattle, 3 that the Ravens used against New England's defense in Week 16. Of course, it was a different dynamic then. They didn't have Milton Williams. Robert Spillane was injured, of course, and he's also dealing at this time with an ankle injury that prevented him from practicing last week. And then 1 play or scheme that might catch you by surprise. I did a full-length examination of their base defensive structure. I'll just do a quick primer here, 1 play to kind of give people a reminder. The rest of this video will be spent talking about what I consider to be anomalous or differential looks by the Patriots defense, either a 6-1, 6-2, or a 5-1 nickel that they'd like to use in second and long. This is going to be a look at the boundary side outside linebacker / hybrid inside linebacker number 48 that they utilize as a SAM into the boundary. Typically, if there's no tight end lined up like you're going to see here last week against the Broncos or in the AFC Championship game against the Broncos, he'll shift back into an inside linebacker position. This is why I'm comfortable calling this a hybrid 3-4, 4-3 defense. And it's normally linked between these 2 players here. 90 and 48, often when 48 is on the field, they're almost always on the same side, 90 being the 5 technique. That's a C-gap defender in between the tight end and the tackle. And then when the tight end vacates, 48 shifts back into the box, and you have what I would consider to be a 4-3 look from a schematic standpoint. I do think that as they got deeper in the playoffs, the offensive line, particularly for the Broncos, was kind of more prepared for these differential looks, number 1, and in addition, some of the post-snap movement that the Patriots have become known for. So once 48 moves over and gets into the box, you can see the impact that it allows these 2 inside linebackers to have. 51, who's more of a run defender, they kind of rotate him with 53, Christian Ellis. But this is the stunt that they run. It's really cool that you have a dedicated B-gap defender in the form of 48, but they're going to cover that B-gap up by slanting both D tackles to their right, our right-hand side of the screen. That's actually not the angle that those guys take. Normally, you're talking about a slight lateral step and then trying to get into the gap. In addition, taking the strong safety and trying to fill this C-gap in between the first tight end and the right tackle. It ends up, being disruptive of the scheme. They've got a lot of ways that they try to disrupt or stop the run game. This is one of them, slanting both D tackles kind of to the weak side, into the boundary. We're talking about 97, which is Milton Williams, and then 94. Bringing the strong safety, allowing the inside linebackers to fit off of it. The running back actually makes it work here, ends up getting a pretty solid game. Going to get into some of their different looks, or I would say somewhat anomalous. This is a 6-1 front, and I will link this to something that we all know about from Super Bowl history. Around 7 years ago. The way that they get this accomplished, and I will give you the all-22 angle so you can see it, is a 4 down lineman. This is against a 13 personnel group by the Texans. 1 OLB, that's the Sam, number 48. And then a Mike linebacker in the case of Robert Spillane. How that changes, their willingness to do some of this stuff when they're focused on trying to stop the run. If Spillane can't go, I would say it changes it a lot because he's so reliable. He's a veteran who's worked his way through, multiple franchises, and now he's, got an opportunity to play in the Super Bowl. I think that if he's out or not able to complete the game, it gives Seattle a more reliable look, if you will, against the run. If they go 12 personnel or even 13. But 48 is a really good football player. I know that he's, not really necessarily known around the league. I think he was a UDFA out of Hawaii initially. Plays well against the run. They get him off the field, don't get me wrong, in their nickel defense. So they clearly do not want him involved in pass coverage, especially from a man or a match standpoint. This is the same play from the all-22 angle. Tight end's going to motion all the way across. So they give him a long run, a long setup to try to kick out 48. And Barmore is the real problem here, number 90. He's the 5 technique that's oftentimes going to be, or almost always going to be, on the same side as 48. It's essentially an underfront when they're in their base 3-4 defensive structure. This is different. It's a 6-1 look with one and then two safeties rolled up into the box. We're talking about these two athletes here on motion. Like I said, it's against 13 personnel. You can see the disruption that Barmore offers here. 48 is winning. The safeties filling downhill. This is what they want to do when they're in these 6-1 or even 5-1 looks. I'm not really sure why, as the playoffs progressed, the Texans and then the Broncos were so focused on downhill run concepts, just didn't see much success in at all in the run game. Once Milton Williams came back in the regular season finale, teams were not getting nearly as much production on downhill run concepts. I would suggest, just like I did in the first preview video that I talked about, Seattle focus on outside zone and stretch concepts to force those guys to run laterally. A look here at 3 plays in a specific look that the Patriots had in against the Ravens, and it really relates to the fullback that the Ravens have relied on for years, and that's Pat Ricard. The Pittsburgh Steelers have often given different looks that the Ravens weren't necessarily prepared for. Sometimes they would actually sub on a defensive tackle. That's kind of what New England has done here. I would call this a 6-2 look. You have 3 dedicated DBs on the field in the form of Christian Gonzalez, Carlton Davis III, and then a free safety in the middle of the field. It's a sub-package defense. Now, the Ravens do have success, and they get them out of it pretty quickly. I'll show you the culminating play here. But if this were to show up, you would still have a Sam linebacker on the field in the form of 48. What I call the rush or the jack on the opposite side. I typically will spot shadow that guy in purple. And then the corners in this 6-2 look are a little bit more on an island, and you can see the Ravens actually take advantage of it here on the first snap. So it's a 21 personnel group. They go play action. Derrick Henry, of course, had a big game. We all know how the thing ended in the fourth quarter. He didn't play in the final 12 minutes. I don't think you see this a whole lot if JSN's on the field. So I will say this. If you go 21 personnel and JSN is off the field, but in particular JSN and Rashid Shaheed, you could get the 6-2 look. I think it could be something that's specific to the threat of JSN, really I think one of the best receivers in the league, if not the best in 2025, and the big play ability of a Rashid Shaheed. I just don't think that whether it's Gonzalez or CD3, they can afford to leave these guys with this much space to defend, essentially taking one of their safeties off the field. In my opinion, if they're going to be in a different look with a 6-man front, it's probably going to be a 6-1. But I'm showing you these plays because it was something that showed up early in their game against the Ravens. Of course, it's not like they had an extra week to prepare for this one, and I think Todd Monken got them out of it pretty quick. So here's a look at what I would expect you to possibly see. The only difference is that this ends up being a one-high safety structure. The game that I mentioned a little bit earlier, or the play that I'm going to show you here in a moment, actually harkens back to the Patriots' game plan against the Rams in the Super Bowl after the 2018 season. Now, Mike Vrabel was not on staff in that season, but Josh McDaniels was. So, in any case, they've rolled a safety down. It really ends up looking like the same 6-2 look that I showed you. The only difference is this is not an inside linebacker. It's a safety. It's a guy who can, move out. So they've taken one of the inside linebackers off the field, replaced him with this safety. They're going to end up reading the Sam basically on an RPO, and I think the Broncos used a very similar play to this. The only difference was the Broncos didn't run a counter scheme out of it. I think it's pretty obvious that Derrick Henry, you'll get the end zone angle in a moment. Derrick Henry might have had an opportunity, to bounce this to the outside because this defensive end is jumping to the inside, or that outside linebacker. I think it's Harold Landry. And so he's basically spilling it or wrong arming it to no one. And if Derrick Henry was able to bounce this to the outside, he might still be running. That same theme is something that I think if you do get some of these looks, you might look for more boundary side runs. Derrick Henry's on the wrong side. He's going to flip here in a moment, but just for explanation purposes, 48, again, I'm calling the Sam. Whoever's opposite him, I'm calling the Jack or the rush linebacker. 48 ends up being the read man. Once Henry switches sides, it's a counter scheme. There's a lot of lines here, so let's get Derrick Henry's path out of the way. What normally occurs on the counter scheme is the guard is going to pull and then kick out the edge defender. That's Landry. And then the backside tackle, Ronnie Stanley, would pull and work up to the frontside inside linebacker or whoever shows. Derrick Henry's job is to take initially a little counter step and, to possibly hold a second-level defender for a moment and set up better angles for the offensive line, and then follow the second guy through the lane. The outside linebacker, Landry, starts to jump to the inside, and this is something that would worry me a little bit if I was a Patriots fan if they do get into this 6-1 look. The group that used the 6-1 look against the Rams and really destroyed Sean McVay's original scheme that took the league by storm in 2018, that group was way more disciplined than this. They were able to set the edge, and then once the running back, if Todd Gurley, whoever, bounced it to the outside, they would just track it down. In this case, Landry jumps to the inside. Henry has committed there perhaps already. Maybe that's why some would say Landry is jumping there. My point is, I don't think it's as well coached, or it wasn't that weak, and I'll give you this next play to kind of prove it. First drive for the Ravens, it's still a 6-2 look, so it's different than the previous snap I showed you because that is number 53, and then that is 51. Now, I do not expect both of those guys to be on the field at the same time in the Super Bowl because 51 normally plays when they're expecting run, and 53 typically plays when they're expecting pass. This is basically a counter RPO, if you will, by the Ravens, whereby you've got a bubble by Zay Flowers out to the field with two potential lead blockers in the form of a tight end and a wide receiver. And then the offensive line is still running that counter scheme. So now these two guys are going to pull and lead the way for Derrick Henry. You get the same dynamic existing with the edge defender. Just like I talked about with Landry on the previous snap. In this case, 48 is wrong-arming it. He's spilling it. There's just nobody to spill it to. There's no one there at all. If this inside linebacker, let's say he's the read-man for a moment, I'm not sure that he was, if he stayed in the middle of the field and Lamar Jackson throws out here to Zay Flowers, you're still going to get a touchdown because it's a 3-on-2. So numbers-wise, the Ravens have the numbers down here to the bottom side. I think the Patriots put themselves in a really poor position. No real good option for Christian Gonzalez here out in space. And, Sam Darnold, Clint Kubiak, their job last week and then this week prior to the Super Bowl is to just prepare for some of these things, have something in their pocket that Sam Darnold can go to, maybe even on the field to exploit these looks. Same play from the end zone angle. There's the Sam, there's the rush or the jack, whatever you want to call him. It's a solo inside linebacker look. If Spillane was to not be able to play or not be able to finish, I think that they're at a severe deficit as far as reliability in there at the inside linebacker position. But they've taken a DB off the field, so you've got one free safety, and then this is Christian Gonzalez into the boundary. There's really nothing that Christian Gonzalez can do. Once 48 spills it to the outside here, then it becomes a 2-on-1. Christian Gonzalez, let's say Christian Gonzalez goes to the inside here. Derrick Henry's just going to bounce it, and it's still going to be a touchdown. It's a 6-2 look that they haven't shown a ton of. I would expect that if you do get an anomalous look like this, it's actually going to be a 6-1. So I'll briefly go over this. This is their defensive gem that they threw. Well, Belichick was still the coach, obviously. Like I said, Vrabel was not involved. No one connected with the team that I'm aware of is still around. But this is quite obviously something that they could go to against 12 personnel looks when they think that the run is coming. And why I suggest to you and why I'm adamant about it is because it allows them to say in a two-high safety structure. 6 + 1 is 7, so you still have 4 DBs on the field, and that allows them, I would expect in their mind, to say, okay, we can still play in a 2-high safety structure, be sound against the pass, but give the Seahawks offensive line and tight ends a different look than they're used to. So I'm calling this guy the Sam, that's Kyle Van Noy, and this is going to be a brutally physical play that he makes on the wide receiver. I'm not going to show the actual play. I'm just going to do screenshots. That's Donta Hightower. If you don't know who he is, I think he was a Hall of Fame caliber linebacker, but he doesn't have the stats to necessarily support that. In this game, he started out as an inside linebacker, and then when there was an injury on the edge, he just promptly moved to outside linebacker and did the same thing that Kyle Van Noy had to do on the outside. So just, extremely versatile. Do the Patriots have a guy like that now? No, not someone who can shift between inside linebacker and outside linebacker and play at that high a level. 48 would be the guy if they had anyone who could move from an OLB to a Mike position, but I don't think they would trust him that much in a 6-1 look like you see here. As far as this particular play, I think it's the second play of the game, but I could be wrong. Second play of the game for the Rams, and you get the classic horizontal conflict created by the running back going to one side, and then the quarterback, in this case it's Jared Goff, booting in the other. I'm not going to show the play, but I am going to show briefly some still shots here just so you guys can kind of get a sense of it. So the way this works out is you got a tight end from one side, running like an over concept, a little bit of a post. Hightower's going to do a great job of settling underneath of it. The wide receiver is going to try to get out into the flats. It's actually Josh Reynolds, who ended up playing like 3 years with the Detroit Lions. And the reason why I'm talking about this one so much is what the Patriots do now with their OLBs. When they get boot, if it's 48, he kind of settles for a moment and stays flat. If it's 33 or 44 or 2, Landry, they kind of go upfield a little bit quicker. A, they are quicker than 48 is, but B, they're coached in a different manner. That's why I'm calling them the rush or the jack. So if it's 48 that they're running the boot to, it makes me wonder if they're in this 6-1 look, if you're not going to get something like this. Again, I'm not showing the play, but 83, post-snap went in this direction, and he got absolutely decked by Van Noy, who then, after the receivers on the ground, was able to redirect and kind of chase Jared Goff down, force him to throw the football out of bounds. My point in showing all of this is the Seahawks run game lately. First of all, it's not as reliant on an 11 personnel glitch like McVay's offense was then. Nobody defended the compressed formations well until this time. The Patriots correctly recognized we need 2 edge defenders out there. We can't be in a 4-2 nickel. We need 2 actual edge defenders out there who can be physical, turn the run play inside. We need a Mike linebacker like a Donta Hightower who can fit it up perfectly. In the Patriots' defensive structure and personnel now, that guy would be Robert Spillane. Let's take a look at and just talk about what Seattle's done extremely well lately, and it's in particular with Kenneth Walker III. These double team concepts out on the edge with edge defenders, basically with one tight end initially engaging the edge defender, and then the second tight end who's going in motion, kind of a late double. It's a way to cheat the system a little bit. In addition to that, I think Cooper Kupp is a real pre-snap indicator for any fan, Seahawks, Patriots, whatever, as far as where the run play might be going. You got Derek Young down here at the bottom side, big physical guy. Could certainly run it over there as well, but there's been enough of these in the playoffs and late in the regular season that I feel confident in saying it's more so about where Kupp lines up from a balanced formation standpoint. I'm calling it a balanced formation. 1 receiver, 1 tight end, 1 receiver, 1 tight end. To me, there's some real data, and I don't know what the data is, but just based on my memory recall and the plays that I've seen, the big plays that I've seen, that Kupp is a pre-snap indicator for where the run play might be going. Well, at least the successful ones, let's put it that way. The play action boot, like I said, I would expect the edge defenders for the Patriots 33, 44, and 2 to veer up field right now and take away Darnold. So some of the cutback stuff or designed windback might actually hit really big against this defense. And what I mean is if it's designed to initially flow to the right, like Walker is here, maybe it wouldn't be this path, but then they've got some type of blocking scheme that brings him back this way. If you're getting this edge defender peeling off for the boot a little bit early, perhaps, that might be one of the things you see Seattle do early to kind of break the structure or break the foundation of the Patriots defense. Initially, you're getting 88, Barner stepping to the edge defender, and then the second tight end is going to late double team him. Another huge factor for Seattle, whether it's actually designed to be outside zone and hit out wide off tackle, or a windback, is the ability to handle these defensive tackles. Barmore, Milton Williams, they're a real handful if you ask me, and I think Milton Williams' availability, his health in the last 4 games, regular season finale and the 3 AFC playoffs, has been a huge factor in them being, high quality defense against the run in particular. Cooper Kupp getting up to the safety here, again, I think is a big part of it. You can see that's actually where Kenneth Walker III goes, directly between this double team on the edge defender and Cooper Kupp on the safety walking up down. They cannot let Kenneth Walker III get to the line of scrimmage untouched. It'll be games like that in the first half and turn into bigger stuff in the second, third quarter, or even the fourth. It's my contention that if Seattle is, a +1 turnover margin and does not turn the football over themselves on the offensive side, they've got a great opportunity to win this football game. The run game is a huge indicator as well. I think it sets up so many things off the play action. Let me give you one wind back concept and where I think it's a wind back. And again, it relates to Cooper Kupp. This is from the Week 16 home win, the thrilling comeback in overtime over the Rams. Again, it's 12 personnel, so kind of pay attention to where Cooper Kupp is. This is going to be the long touchdown run by Kenneth Walker III. It's 12 personnel, a balanced formation, one receiver, one tight end to the right, one receiver, one tight end to the left. The difference here between this look by the Rams and what I've suggested you might see the Patriots come out in against 12 personnel, where I believe they'll be in a 2-high safety structure. Here, the Rams are 1 high. They've taken the strong safety, rolled him up in the box, and they've gone with their base defensive structure, talking about these two inside linebackers here and here. This is the strong safety who's rolled up in the box. But as far as the scheme goes, to me, this is a designed Windback. So Kenneth Walker, I recognize that I know Kenneth Walker III is off screen for you guys. His initial path is a little bit more downhill. And this is kind of what I would expect. This is not a regular zone scheme where everyone is working this way. Watch how they block this with the right tackle and right guard versus the center. The center is actually zone stepping, zone comboing with the left guard, Zabel, but the right tackle and right guard are stepping back on the 3 technique and the edge defender. So instead of having the guard move up and the tackle try to take over this defensive tackle, they've basically locked it on the backside with both of those guys. And where I think this relates to Kupp is, I think it's a designed Windback. So Kupp is working up to this strong safety. If the strong safety was here, then Kupp would continue on and he'd go to this inside linebacker. Basically, the first, second level defender that you see or that shows up, that's who he would go get. Now, that guy actually takes himself out of the play. That strong safety I'm talking about. And Sundell ends up picking him up. But you can see Cooper Kupp is getting himself mixed up in the middle. He's trying to go get him. That's why Cooper Kupp is so focused on getting there. And what it does is it creates this backside seam where you have the tackle working out on the edge defender, the guard working out on the 3 technique, and Walker bringing this thing back underneath of that seam. I think it's designed. That's why I'm comfortable calling it a Windback instead of a cutback. I think he's a huge part of this game plan, Kenneth Walker III, and I don't mean just from a Seahawks standpoint. I think he's a huge determining factor. His effectiveness, how consistently they can get the run game going, particularly in the first half. I do not expect the Patriots to use a 6-1 look or obviously not a 6-2 against 11 personnel. 11 personnel, so 1 running back on the field, 1 tight end, and 3 receivers. They'll be in their nickel 4-2-5, or maybe a 5-1 nickel if they want to show it. And I'll talk about that one here in a moment. 12 personnel to me is a huge swing factor. The first 2 or 3 times that Seattle is in 12 personnel, try to do yourself a favor because the announcers probably won't talk about it. Typically, NFL announcers wait till the 3rd or 4th or 5th time something is shown to actually mention it and try to explain it to the viewers. I know that they only have so much time, to be honest with you, but I think Kenneth Walker III is the game plan for the Patriots to try to stop first, obviously, as well as JSN. Let's get to that 5-1 look again. The first preview that I did was on their base 3-4, 4-3 structure. It's still a 7-man front. These looks that I've shown you so far generally focused on the 6-1 that we saw some against the Ravens, 6-2 as well that I don't expect to see unless it's in the red zone, number 1, or number 2, JSN and or Shaheed are off the field. More commonly seen, a 5-1 look and how it might be attacked. So first of all, the Broncos had a pretty good plan. If you ask me, it's an 11 personnel group. And you can see that what I'm calling the Sam linebacker is 91, edge defender up to the top. Rush or the jack is 44 down here to the bottom. It's really a zone read option, but you've got a flat route attached to it on the bottom side of the screen. I think you've got to make Spillane wrong. So even though it is a 5-1 look, they are rolling this safety down to kind of create a 5-2 look with these 2 guys. But when you get the end zone angle here in a moment, you'll see that those 2 guys are a little bit more shifted towards the field. They like to roll the safety down to kind of still create a 3-4 or a 5-2 look with a second inside linebacker. Let me show you what I mean from the end zone angle. But getting back to Spillane or whoever's playing there, I think you got to make him wrong. So horizontal conflict to me is the way to do that. I'm talking about in their 5-1 look because there's so much stress put on the inside linebacker to be right as far as flow. In addition, you are getting the same stunt that I've talked about a couple of times in the first preview. It's happening over here between Christian Barmore and number 91. But there's a read that's occurring. It's somewhat similar to some stuff the Ravens ran against the Patriots in Week 16. And, you saw the touchdown by Derrick Henry that really resembles this one. The only difference here is that Stidham is keeping the football. Spillane ends up being, wrong because he's playing, the running back and the blocking scheme. You've got the flat route attached to it that I'll show you in a minute. We'll go back to the all-22 angle. Easy money or easy yards for Stidham. Let me cover this stunt one more time. We're talking about when they want to stop the run. Oftentimes these guys are getting the D tackle, the 3 technique upfield, and then stunting this guy underneath. The Broncos, I felt like, of the film that I have seen, Chargers, Texans, Broncos, they were the team the most prepared for it. You get the idea. And what would concern me a little bit about the Patriots is if you're attached to the back, the edge defender attached to the back, and this scheme is coming, then you should force a give read because they're trying to stop the run here. So a little bit less coordinated than maybe we would expect from the quality of defense they've played. Hopefully I said that in a way that makes sense. This guy's forcing a keep read. If this is happening over here and you've got a defense operating at the height of its execution level and its talent, then he should be here forcing a give read, 91 trying to get upfield and stop this play, as well as, whoever the force defender is outside here that will be off screen for us, either a safety or a corner. Same play from the all-22 angle, and you'll just get an idea, I think, of the horizontal nature that's put. It's really almost triple option, to be honest with you. You've got this option. I think it's Ingram running out in the flats with 2 lead blockers here and here. And then the running back crossing the quarterback's face, call that option 2, and then Stidham being option 3. Don't think you'll see this, right, from Sam Darnold, where he's reading someone, but we will, I think, get situations where he's counting numbers. So you got 3-on-3 out here on the edge. So if this is Sam Darnold playing quarterback, he's probably given the football. I would assume, not expect him to put the ball in the running back's gut and then keep it and run around the edge. But the one thing I will say, if it's a 5-1 look, you could almost reliably say, I know when the back goes here, this guy's got to track it. So we're going to remove him from the equation altogether. That's what I'm seeing. That's what I know, from a 5-1 look, that there's a lot of pressure put on that solo inside linebacker. So then it just becomes, a more simple read if you want post-snap, even for a guy like Sam Darnold. Let's get to the 3-0-3 nature of what I was trying to mention a moment ago. So you do have the rush or the jack here. Off screen is the Sam, who I would typically highlight in orange. It could be 48. It could be someone else, depending on the personnel group. You've got a 3 technique D tackle, a tight 3, and that's Christian Barmore. A nose tackle who's often going to shift, and this is one of the things I think Seattle should look at, and that's snapping the ball a little soon. Because typically the stunt that they run oftentimes occurs after they've shifted the nose technique late. And then this little bit wider 3, which is a little bit of a giveaway, if you ask me, in the stunt that might be coming. I'm talking about the late movement that you get there by the nose tackle once there is motion. I would like to see Seattle come up 2 or 3 times in the first quarter and kind of snap the football quickly, force New England to get in the look they want to be in really soon. You can see the double insert nature between the receivers, Christian Kirk, and I think that's Hutchinson. It's unsuccessful. The stunt that occurs that I was talking about is between the nose tackle and Milton Williams, 97. As often as they do this stunt, and this time it happens to be with the D tackle, I'm talking about the nose tackle getting himself into the A gap and Milton Williams stunting underneath. As often as they do this, and again, I talked about this a lot in the first preview video that I did, I'd like to see more outside zone, off-tackle run concepts, even some toss stuff. Make these guys run horizontally and have to deal with Kenneth Walker III out in space. So a similar 5-1 look, that's the whole point of this video. I'm giving you differential looks for what you could focus on as a fan pre-snap, and also, the work that I'm sure Clint Kubiak, Sam Darnold, and the whole offensive staff have put in, already to kind of prepare. So it's a 5-1 look, and what it allows them to do is have 5 DBs on the field, right? 1 inside linebacker, 2 or in fact 3 safeties. There's the nickel Marcus Jones, who I think was second team All-Pro. and then play a variety of coverages. They're going to show you man, however, if you switch the receivers to the other side. So what I mean is you've got one tight end down here to the bottom, two receivers to the top. If that's JSN and Rashid Shaheed and they're playing man, Christian Gonzalez is going to be over here. If you get a man matchup of Shaheed or JSN against Marcus Jones, even though he's a spectacular player and he's had a great year, I think you like your chances if you're the Seattle Seahawks. So watch this post-snap, the way that this looks from a coverage standpoint compared to the next play that I show you from the same 5-1 look. The idea is they got two edge defenders who can get pressure. Now, that's normal, typical. In this case, they're actually dropping both of those guys out. Still creating a four-man rush, and 21 ends up being free. These are the edge defenders, 91 into the boundary, 44 to the field. But that's kind of what I'm talking about. If you see a 5-1 look and you give them two receivers to the field, they kind of have to give away their coverage. I think Spillane is wrong here. I think Spillane should be, in this area here with this OLB dropping out, that OLB dropping to the flats, Jones dropping to the flats. Really, this just looks like a cover three. You shouldn't have the stacked nature of Spillane and the OLB. My guess is that Spillane is the guy that's wrong. It doesn't really necessarily matter here. I don't think it's a pattern, to be honest with you, that they don't play their coverage as well out of 5-1. It just, happens to be that the zone that was vacated by the blitzing safety ended up being where C.J. Stroud went with the football. Let's do one more illustration of what I would not like to see Kubiak and the Seahawks focus on. I'm really just trying to give you information, to be honest with you, to enjoy the game. Perhaps it's too soon, 7 days before the Super Bowl. But, you're more than welcome to come back and revisit this later, number one. Number two, sometimes I cut these up into smaller excerpts, and we'll put them out on YouTube a little bit later on. But a downhill run concept, you get the same stunt from the Patriots. When they suspect that downhill run is coming, this is the stunt they go to. I covered it in the first preview video. One thing to talk about here is, when they are giving you man and you go trips, this is a little hypocritical. I would like to see Seattle snap the ball early, but I would also like to see them use motion with wide receivers to kind of sift out the coverage for Sam Darnold. In this case, we're pretty sure that it's man. It's a 5-1 look. You've got two safeties up here to the top side, to the field, a middle of the field free safety, and then there is Christian Gonzalez down here on the bottom. I think that's with Jaden Higgins. Downhill run concept. The stunt they use is typical. It's Barmore getting upfield through the B-gap, and he's a load when that happens, when he's trying to get through here through the B-gap, and then 91 stunting underneath. They're free on this so many times, and you can see he actually fronts up the running back, or the running back sees it, I should say, and that causes the running back to bounce it back to where all the safeties were. This is kind of how they stop the run. I've done another preview that focused on their base defense. That's the same exact stunt that they prefer. But you can see the nature of the 5-1 look, the stress that will be put on Spillane. To me, if you get this 5-1 look and you got two safeties rolled up to one side, I'm talking about these two guys here. If it's me and I'm suggesting anything, I'm saying I want to run the football over here. Now, how do you do that? Either Darnold needs to get under center and get that accomplished, number one, or number two, try to get them to show you this movement. I'm talking about the movement of the nose tackle, that right there. So getting lined up quicker, seeing this motion or this shift by the nose tackle is a clear indicator where this stunt is coming from. I have not once seen that nose tackle shift over here and then the stunt emanate from the other side. So again, Seattle getting there early, getting the play call out. A lot is going to be on Darnold. I would love to see some under center outside zone stuff, but even if it's out of the shotgun, I would like to see, once they've shown this, let's go behind motion. So go behind motion. If it's out of the shotgun, get that receiver over there, because we feel like we know that this defensive end, this outside linebacker, is going to vacate that C gap and try to run underneath. Hopefully I said it in a way that makes sense. Of course, I've never done any game plans, like this whatsoever at the NFL level. Obviously, trying to give you as much of a look as possible based on my own knowledge of their base defensive structure and some of the anomalous looks. The last one that I'll give you, again, you've got an 11 personnel look, and it's a 5-1 structure by the Patriots. I think this one's actually from the third quarter. And why do they do this? as opposed to a typical 4-2-5 nickel like Seattle plays, right? 4 down linemen to rush the passer, 2 inside linebackers, or in the case of like, a 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, Seattle is going to have a Manwari shifted over as the dime linebacker. So personnel-wise, it's almost like a 4-1 for the Seahawks. The only difference is that a Manwari, is lined up as a second inside linebacker, even though positionally he's not. Here, they're pretty much showing you, all right, we've only got 1 inside linebacker, so they're limited in the coverages that they can play, except they trust the safeties a lot. I would love to see stuff like this if and when Darnold recognizes it, well, if they play it, and when Darnold recognizes it, opportunities to get the ball to JSN, Shaheed, or whoever outside the numbers down the field, because you're generally going to get a 1 high safety structure if it's a 2-by-2 formation. So 2-by-2, 2 receivers here, even though, one of those guys up top is the tight end, 2 receivers up there. I like the late motion because what it does is really tell you what coverage you're going to get. Talking about 87, who's a tight end, shifting, notice Christian Gonzalez obviously didn't move at all. That tells you it's going to be man. Happens to be a win against Gonzalez. That'll be the next video that I put out, will be stuff about Christian Gonzalez versus JSN or even CD3, who's a guy that I really like a whole lot. Some people probably don't like listening to my content when I'm complimentary of opposing teams' players, but I watched a ton of CD3 film when he was with the Lions last year, 2024. Played spectacular. Man, the last 5 or 6 games before he got hurt in 2024, I thought he was playing at an all-pro level. To me, huge matchups on the outside when Darnold knows that it's man. Even if it's Christian Gonzalez against JSN, you got to trust JSN. Maybe a little bit of a push off here, but Jackson Smith-Njigba is just too talented for one DB to stop. The teams that were able to slow him down over the course of the season, they did so with team defense, hedging their safeties or multiple players to his side, really kind of overreacting to his routes. This is my second attempt to try to, give you some information, some things to look for. Of course, the broadcast angle is shitty sometimes. You can't even see, 10 or 12 of the players. Sometimes you get the behind view or zoomed in on a quarterback or a receiver, someone, who just made a play, trying to give you information, what to identify as a fan. And, of course, you can come back next week after the game and tell me I was way off in my predictions about, a 6-1 look, Kubiak relying on outside zone concepts. I think it should be like the jab, right cross, if you will, or lead right, setting the Patriots up for other things. It's going to be a huge responsibility for Sam Darnold to look at things pre-snap and then adjust or get the Seahawks in the right look, the specific look that Kubiak wants, that he designed, over the course of the 2-week prep time. I doubt if you see any option stuff like we did with Stidham on the RPO bubble option play or like Lamar and the Ravens had set up on the Henry touchdown. I do think the outside run is critical, whether it's toss, whether it's a handoff from under center, anything from the shotgun. Something in addition to that is just telling me that, there's a lot of burden on Kenneth Walker III to play a lot of snaps. I'm just foreseeing or thinking that there'll be a moment in the second quarter where Walker's played a lot of snaps. Maybe the Seahawks offense is succeeding. Maybe he scored once. Who knows? And it's like a 2nd and 9 or 2nd and 10 after a short run by Walker or an incomplete pass, and they get Walker off the field and go outside zone to Halani, and he hits something big, or a backup running back. My reason for calling for that or kind of predicting it is that the Patriots are certainly going to come in focused on stopping Kenneth Walker. He's been so devastating on outside zone. I think they're going to give you their best look in the first quarter. First possession, second possession, New England is going to be in their best look. I'm talking about against 12 personnel. The 12 personnel ace under center that I showed you, as well as the 2 tight ends on the same side that I showed you with the second play. The Rams were able to slow the run game down significantly in the second half, in the NFC Championship game. That factor, which team can slow down or even stop the run consistently, I think that's going to go a long way towards determining the game flow and also, who wins this football game, because the ability to run the football on 1st and 10, 4 or 5, maybe even 6 yards, it just opens up more options for the play caller on that side. But conversely, it would narrow your focus and make the defense's job easier if you're unsuccessful. Maybe make not the defense's job easier, but more simple. Defensively, Seattle was third in the NFL at 93 rushing yards per game allowed, and the Patriots were fourth. There's just a clear differential in the quality of New England's run defense when Milton Williams was out. There's a few other things I've thought of besides outside zone and stretch. Play action on early downs when New England might be, running that stunt that I've showed you, or overcommitting to the run, and basically taking some shots to guys like, Rashid Shaheed, or even just creating plays for him. The reverse that I showed in the first preview video that I covered, I think I put that out Friday night. At this point in time, the days are kind of running together as far as watching film. I think Shaheed's just been a tremendous boost for this team, a playmaker on offense and special teams, and he's often kind of kickstarted these waves of Seahawks runs, to use a basketball analogy. It's almost like Shaheed is the guy who, you're down 6 and he gets a dunk, an and one or something like that, and the next thing you know, you go on a 12-0 run. In addition to the run concepts with Walker, outside zone, off tackle, I'd like to see split zone or even the designed windback that I show you, where you don't bring a tight end across the formation, in particular against that 5-1 look. There's a few other somewhat less noticeable or perhaps important things I would suggest. I covered them a moment ago. Snap the ball quick, especially if the run game is working. The nose tackle likes to shift late, maybe getting lined up quick, a hard count to get him to shift, show the stunt, and then flip the play. Basically run to that side with the understanding with the guard and tackle, hey, you're going to get that stunt. Let's go ahead and assume it. You could be wrong, right? Another thing that New England does late, and this isn't specific to the Patriots, in that 5-1 look, they like to walk the safeties up late and kind of allow those guys, those safeties who move up into the box, to maybe exist outside the blocking scheme. I'm talking about when they have 3 safeties on the field and they use one of those guys to move up and create that 3-4 or that 5-2 look. It seems like they do all of those things, later in the play clock. And they took advantage, I think, of some of the quarterbacks they faced, at least in the last 2 games, not necessarily talking about the Chargers and Justin Herbert. I want to see how the Patriots respond to some of the things the Seahawks do, because they are a sub-package defense. I am definitely expecting a 6-1 look versus 12 personnel. If they feel like their edge defenders can handle the tight ends for Seattle, basically would put Seattle's tight ends in a little bit more of a one-on-one situation. That's where you might see the tight end motion across, get that toss double or that outside zone stretch double that I showed you on one of the plays here. Vrabel wasn't on their staff in 2018, but Josh McDaniels was. That was a look, 6-1 with a 2 high safety structure, that changed McVay's scheme immediately. The ensuing season, the 2019 regular season, the last year that Jared Goff was there, that changed the way that teams played him. Played Sean McVay, and it forced him to evolve and become, what you see now. The next video I'm going to do, as far as a preview goes, is going to focus on Christian Gonzalez. Like I said, he's a fantastic player. I held him in high opinion coming out of college, and to me, he's lived up to it so far. I think some teams have gone after him recently on certain routes, and JSN is so versatile, so balanced with where he can attack deep, intermediate, short routes. I think JSN presents some opportunities to maybe go after Christian Gonzalez, who's played, really well in the playoffs, but I have probably 8 or 10 snaps of Gonzalez's play in the playoffs, as well as some plays to show from their matchup in the 2024 regular season game in New England. I appreciate you guys' time. If you enjoyed the video, please let me know in the comment section, number 1. Number 2, if you think other Seahawks fans would enjoy this film study focus on the run game by Seattle to an extent, but more so the different looks that New England might go to stop or slow down the run game, but still try to stay in that safer 2 high safety structure. If you think other Seahawks fans would enjoy this look at that dynamic or all of those dynamics, then please consider grabbing a link to this video, sharing it out on social media to help this content get more reach.